Hi, it's Richard here from Intelligent Advisor IT Consulting. This video sort of comes in the middle of a series of articles. The articles have been discussing at a general level, not just within Oracle Intelligent Advisor, the concept of explainability and related concepts like observability. In the article series, we've looked at how the idea of explaining why within our policy automation framework um, means very different things to very different people. And a good policy automation platform needs to be able to provide, if possible, all of those different forms of explainability. Obviously, for a developer, an explainability might simply be why is this answer different to the one that I was expecting? But for someone who is a policy consultant or a government official, explainability is maybe understanding why the benefits bill has gone up or why there are many more rejections. There's a couple of other sort of personae in there. If you're a system administrator, you've got different needs to explain and observe what's going on. And in the first article, we looked at those kind of different personae of who needs to know what. And it all comes under the subject header of explainability or the right to ask why. In the second article, we looked at adding layers of explainability where they don't exist, and we used Catala for that to build a little plugin which adds visual explainability to a Catala set of rules. In this third article, we're going to look more at the systemic kind of why, the systemic observable explanation. And for those of you who read the articles, you'll know that it comes into an area which was once upon a time covered by a product called the in-memory analysis platform, or whatever it was called. And this was an add-on to the Oracle Intelligent Advisor Hub, which provided you with very powerful, pretty much real-time analysis capability of what was happening at a high level with your interviews. So it gave you charts and what have you. The concept behind it was great. For very good reasons, that product was withdrawn, I think, no more than about a year later. So it never really got a chance to show its strengths. But in a sense, that was the inspiration for what we're about to do, or at least what we're about to try and do. We're going to take an interview, which you can see right here, and that interview is going to be configured as you would expect it to be configured, but we're going to tweak it a little bit, and hopefully the tweaks we can then intercept what was tweaked and use it to build our own cheap and cheerful proof of concept observability platform. You'll recall, I'm sure, that the average interview like this typically will have a connection to some transactional data source like Oracle Siebel CRM, Oracle Fusion Service, Salesforce Service or Marketing, or ServiceNow, Dynamics. Nobody cares. It's basically some form of database, SaaS or otherwise, that is providing information like the stuff on the left-hand side. And this interview is no exception. So this interview is connected for that transactional data is connected to Siebel, and I'm just pulling data in for demonstration purposes from Siebel Systems. And of course, within an interview, there will be key criteria, things that cause the outcomes to change. So, they might be dates, numbers, circumstances, whatever it is. The point is there will be criteria that, make things happen. And of course, there'll be an outcome. And the outcome might also be something that is important to you. If not, it'll be important to the citizen. So you may recall, if you ever came across it, that the in-memory policy analysis platform, the sort of the specifics of it was you essentially had two connections, which was unusual for an interview, since normally you're used to creating an interview that had one connection to Oracle Siebel or whatever. And you had two connections in this case. You had one to your transactional database that just did all the usual load and save. And then you had another connection to this wonderful big beast that was the times 10 analysis backend. And what we've done here is, as I said, this is connected to Siebel for its transactional data, but we've also marked up using standard custom properties some of these criteria as being of interest to us for analysis purposes. So we've marked this one, for example, the start date, as being useful for analysis because it's an input. And we've given it a name so that we have something to use in our analysis tool dashboards that isn't too long and too complicated. And we've also done the same over here for an outcome that we're interested in. We've said, okay, this is useful for us for analysis because it's an output that could go up and could go down, and we want to be able to track this at a system, at a high level. We want to have a dashboard. Basically, we want to be able to visually and we want to observe how start date and end date and whatever the other criteria were have an effect on the benefit value, so that we can see, oh my gosh, the bill for benefits is going up, is going down, and so on over time. So what else have we done? We've taken this interview, and of course, because it's a standard interview which commits data back to Siebel, we have a submit button. But we've also taken the out-of-the-box feature to add the interview transcript. You'll recall that the transcript is literally just the screens and the data and everything else that's in your interview. And we send that back on the submit. But that doesn't get stored in Siebel in this context. That gets used for our analysis engine. So the separation is normal data goes back to Siebel. This transcript file doesn't go back to Siebel. On the back end, so we just need to deploy this interview as normal. This interview is deployed on the server and is connected to Siebel through a generic connection. And the generic connection, as I mentioned earlier, is just supporting load and save. So it's doing a typical Salesforce Fusion service, whatever you want to call it, load and a typical save. Because it's a generic connector, so it's using the generic integration protocol, we get to write it ourselves. So we get to, of course, customize what it does. So we have a little bit of JavaScript, very small piece of JavaScript, I think it's about 120 lines, 150 lines now, that handles the load requests and the save requests. And if it detects that there's a JSON file attached, it extracts that JSON file and dumps it in a folder somewhere. Since they all have a timestamp on them, we can just dump them in there. So this little node server is running here on my laptop. And I'm using ngrok to expose this node server with a publicly visible URL. So in other words, what is HTTP localhost 3000 on my local PC is this public address you can see right here. By the way, by the time you read this video, the public address will no longer be active, so don't get smart and try and use it. So this is the URL which is plugged into the OIA hub to say that we have a generic connection that goes through here. And that's how we make our local middleware or local JavaScript file visible to the outside world so we can use it in our hub. So what actually happens in real life is quite straightforward. Go back to our interview. So we launch our interview as we would expect, and we're going to append a Oracle Siebel contact ID to it. As I said, we do a standard load. We see our standard load, and we have our basic information which came from Siebel, and now we have our important information that we're configuring here. Doesn't really matter, does it? Let's put some information in here that's some way pertinent. And we'll set this, and we'll move to the next one. So we have our output, benefits expected, and as I said earlier, we're going to submit, which sends the transactional stuff back to Siebel and sends the JSON file wherever we decide to dump it. So we're going to do that. Siebel has been updated. It's not relevant for this, but we've captured here, you can see our transcript files, and you can see the latest one, which is about right now. And in there we have the screens of our time-stamped interview session. And we have our custom properties, which I noticed that I actually managed to put a spelling mistake, but that's no big deal. We have our input analysis properties, and we have our output analysis properties. So we have everything we need to be able to extract whatever the key fields were and the information that was entered into them and their type and all that sort of thing, so that we can then imagine putting this into our analysis platform. Since we have a timestamp, we have an interview name, we have various inputs, various outputs, we know what the numbers are, we know what their names are, we should be able to do something with it. And that will involve creating vibe coding, probably our to be defined analysis platform. But that's where we are right now without any rampant vibe coding. We have our simple setup ready to go. See you in the next one.